So you're sitting there, palette by your side, and you'd be like, yeah, you have no idea what to paint. Well, today I've got just the exercise. No, scratch that. I've got just the art piece for you to dive into. It's the one exercise you don't want to skip for two really important reasons. Number one, this exercise requires absolutely no planning to be beautifully successful. And number two, it requires very little decision making to yield something gorgeous. And I think you know by now that I am an avid watercolor collector. I mean, yeah, I designed my own watercolor palette, but that doesn't stop me from finding all the goods that folks are making all over the world. Friends, I love Wildthorne, some of the best handmade watercolors out there. They range from sheer and lovely and granulating and creamy and opaque like gouache. Oh, I love them. And so I have 12 new colors that just came in. Well, kind of just came in. You might want to take a look at this crazy art supply haul and hear all about how I tend to sit on new supplies for too long. Check it out below. Motivation wasn't my issue here today. I am so motivated to play around with these new colors that I didn't even really reassemble this palette to fit them in properly. I just tucked them in wherever they would go, and I'll deal with it later. Friends, you're dealing with a free spirit here. I warned you. So let's dive into what I call palette-led painting. It's basically a dance. You don't know what to paint and you want to paint, but you don't know what to paint, and back and forth, and you get it. So instead of just floundering and doing nothing, you're gonna let your palette lead the way. Let me explain. Actually, let me show you. So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna spray down your palette, get it ready to roll. And you are going to, every time you go to your palette to pick up a new paint color, you're just gonna follow along in order, starting at one point or one end of your palette. So that's the absolutely no planning part of this process that I love, because you're just following the order of your palette. So you're probably wondering, like, the second part of this, well, Kristy, what do I paint? Paint what you love. Paint what you're comfortable with. The point is, it doesn't matter what you paint. If you're in the mood for an easy, breezy, super low stress session, lean in the direction of painting the thing that you're most comfortable with. And for me, that is just a super basic, kind of round daisy-like flower from a side view and a top-down view. Bunch of leaves, a bunch of stems, and here we go. I'm using my 1/2-inch dagger and a whole lot of press, drag, and lift. Press, drag, and lift, and even some press and lift, press and lift. And if you're wondering what in the world I am talking about, no, I am not a Lamaze instructor. I'm gonna link a video below all about this really cool painting technique that is super versatile. You might wanna check it out. Now, you'll notice, friends, I've already got like 4 colors on the page. No lie, I'm just working through this palette in the order. I started at one end and I'm gonna end at the other. So I'm starting with purples, and I'm gonna be ending with all of my yellows. That's where we're at. So I'm not really thinking too much about composition. I'm working on this round paper. This is Paul Rubens 100% cotton watercolor paper. I really like the round format. I've been having a lot of fun with it lately. Some of my flowers are a full like pinwheel, so a top-down view or a flat lay kind of view. And then others are just like 3 or 4 or 5 petals that are clumped together at the base and fanning out from the base for a very, very stylized side view flower. Another thing I like to do with this follow your palette, let your palette lead the dance kind of technique is to grab the color, paint it in one area, but then also paint it in another 2 or 3 areas. And that's just a little hack for some super simple compositional go-to stuff that's going to ultimately give you a nicer, more balanced look in the end. This isn't like high-tech composition here, friends. This is like fast and loose composition. I'm also varying my shapes, so I'm adding some dots, I'm adding some specks, some dashes, and yeah. Because this is an exercise ultimately meant to pull you out of the watercolor doldrums, maybe this is you coming out of a long dry spell creatively, I want you to really force yourself to not stay too long in any one decision. 3 to 5 seconds max, and honestly 5 seconds I think is a little too much. This is a fantastic way to also explore a brand new palette. It's basically a twist on my super free-spirited swatching technique. I'm gonna link a bunch of videos below on that if you're curious. Another little thing I do with this technique is rinse my brush, and bring some clean water back to the page next to a stroke that I just made, just to make something bigger or see how the color does with more water added to it. So that is totally allowed in this particular exercise. Not that you need my permission to, there are no rules here. What am I saying? Moving on. And another thing that I do during this technique is I pay attention to the tiny moments of wonder that are happening. Just a few moments ago, I laid down that creamy sage green. It almost has like a gouache consistency, and it bumped up to that really, really, really dark green on the left-hand side there. And there was just a small explosion that was so lovely. And because I took a few moments, I noticed it. So leave some margin in this process for noticing smaller moments. Let's head to comments. I want to hear what palette you are going to use to do this exercise with me, because I know you're going to do this, right? You're going to paint along with me at some point. I mean, keep watching now, but you're going to come back and paint with me. Let me know which palette you're going to use. Maybe it's a palette you've been just sitting on, you haven't done anything with it. Maybe it's an old palette you haven't used in years. Maybe it's super cheap watercolors you've been wanting to just like experiment with. Let's have a conversation. Another thing you can do with this technique is let your brush run out of the color that you just picked up, just to see what happens. I'm back, friends. And you know what? It occurred to me that you might be wondering, Kristy, all these cute stylized brush strokes, like how do you learn them? How do you figure them out? Well, I've got a few videos below that are incredible, teaching you about filler flowers and greenery and berries and dots and dashes and all the things. Check it out when you have a moment. The kind of stroke that you make actually is almost all about how you hold your brush. We call it brush handling, and this video is all about just that. Friends, this has been a blast. Happy, happy, happy painting. Yeah, this one deserved 3 happies for sure. See you soon.